Welcome to the GTN Show.
Yeah, welcome. On today's show, we take a look at Alex Yee's incredible London Marathon performance and World Triathlon update their rules again.
We also take a look at all the action from Ironman Texas, which did live up to the hype. And Nike have announced a new project called Breaking 4.
Weird. I could break 4. Even without their super shoes. Right, on to the show. Okay, London Marathon this weekend. Did you tune in?
I did actually, yeah.
Oh, it's such a buzz, isn't it?
It does a buzz. I had it on the background. We actually considered going all the way to London to watch it, but decided that was a bit too much with the crowds and the 3 kids. But we did watch it, had it on TV.
Yeah, and obviously all eyes on Alex Yee. And he delivered. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Did you see him cross the finish line?
I didn't.
He was actually running better than pretty much anyone ahead of him. He flew around that last corner. He was really looking good.
So he went in with a quite optimistic goal of 2:08, I believe it was. Somewhere around that region. But I think there was I heard somewhere between 2:08 to 2:12 he was kind of aiming for. He came in 2:11:08.
Yeah, he says, one of the best moments of my life. I didn't hit my goal, but I had the best time doing it. London, you really hit different. And he was P14 overall and the second Brit over the line with only Mohammed ahead of him in 9th place. So he was right up there.
That is
very impressive.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Now, that does ask, actually, let's just run through splits quickly. Listen to this quickly for 5K splits. Think about the 5K he runs in a sprint distance triathlon. 15:12, 15:21, 15:08, 15:20, 15:08, 15:36, 16:04, 16:15 for his 5K splits the whole way through. And I mean, any one of those splits will win most sprint distance triathlons. It's quite impressive.
Yeah, it's really impressive.
I did ask the question, and we don't actually have an answer. So if you do have an answer, let us know. Is this the fastest ever marathon by a triathlete?
Oh, I think it's got to be.
It might be the fastest ever triathlon by anyone marathon by anyone who's ever even done a triathlon. I mean, if you look at the elite runners who finished ahead of him, I don't think any of them have even attempted doing a triathlon. Not even when they were 14 and they just went and had to do it. It might be the fastest marathon by anyone who's ever done a triathlon.
I think you're probably right, actually. It does beg the question, I guess, his build and prep for this has been pretty substantial. I know he's kept the swimming and the biking up, but I can't imagine he's going to go and ace a triathlon tomorrow.
Yeah, did this ruin his entire triathlon season? Well, I actually was looking at that, and then I saw an interview from straight afterwards, and he said that from February 2026, he is back all in on triathlon. And until then, anything is on the table, including potentially another marathon to try and go better than his 2:11.
So he's literally kind of essentially signed out of triathlon for the year to a degree and just sort of...
It looks like it. And why not? He'll still have 3 years from February to get ready for LA 2028. So,
a bit like Georgia Taylor Brown with cycling. It's kind of doing something different for a year.
So you may still see Alex Yee go even faster than that marathon. And then one more question I have on this, Mark. Do you think this means that when he does eventually, somewhere down the line, step up to the full distance Ironman, he's going to run a 2:20 or 2:25? Always that completely different kettle of fish when you put a swim in a bike before, and
180k on a TT bike.
Not going to translate whatsoever. That Kristian Blummenfelt running 2:33s and Patrick Langer running 2:32s is actually the limit for human performance.
I don't know, but I think we all want to see it, don't we?
We do.
Yeah. Also, a bit of a shout out to another, ex-triathlete. It's actually my old housemate, David Bishop, Tom Bishop's brother, twin brother. He was actually 23rd overall, and notable, he's got a 9 till 5, quite a hectic, travelling around the world, and he ran a 2:15:58, which isn't actually a PB for him, but flipping phenomenal.
Very impressive. Yeah, very impressive. Some more results from there. Actually, Hugo Milner was in
the race. Because he was the pacer, wasn't he?
He was the pacer, yeah. He was the pacer for the 2:08 group. So he had to take them through halfway in 64 minutes, which he did. And then it looks like from his Strava, he carried on for another 8 or 9 Ks, got to 30K. A 30K PR for him, as you would imagine. Just a triathlete pacing the best runners in the world.
Nice. Also, Non Stanford was there racing. I'm not sure whether she started out competitively and then sort of reined it in. She had some cramping issues and various things. Had to walk in the last stages, but also her foot.
Two different colour shoes there at the finish line. Ouch. And then did you see this one, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, someone's
relevant
feet,
to you.
Someone's feet that may be hurting. Tommy Trees set a new Guinness World Record for Crocs Marathon. Around a 2:48.48. Put my time to shame.
What was
your
time?
Mine was 3:25.
Next year's London Marathon, Mark. Yeah. Bit of training, I reckon. You could.
I think, maybe not doing a downhill mile in the same week might help me out a lot. But no, that's flipping impressive.
It is very impressive.
Very impressive.
There was actually another triathlete out running this weekend, almost a marathon, not quite 24 miles, but a lot hillier than the London Marathon. Alistair Brownlee was doing the 3 peaks and actually finished third.
It's like it's a fell race up in the Yorkshire Dales, I think. But yeah, he finished third.
Hilly and off-road. 3:08 for almost a marathon distance on really rugged terrain is
and also
shifting.
And that event is there's quite a lot of heritage. It's the fell running scene is very competitive at that particular event. So third place in that is
going back to his roots there. One more thing I noticed on the internet this week: speeding triathlete got a ticket in Ireland. John Blake actually got pulled over by the cops for going 62 kilometers an hour in a 50 kilometer an hour zone. He said he was testing out his 58 tooth chainring for his upcoming race.
Of course he was.
Accidentally went too fast. He could have got a €40 fine, but actually the cop took pity on him and let him off with a warning. So he didn't get a fine. But yeah, be warned if you're testing out your 58 tooth chainring that you're on a road that actually allows you to go that fast. In the news this week, Nike have announced breaking 4. And no, Mark, it is not breaking 4 hours for the marathon. That would not be a very
no, it wouldn't. No.
tough goal.
I really think I could probably
Much like the breaking 2 that they did with Eliud Kipchoge, where they tried to get him under 2 hours for the marathon, they are trying to get Faith Kipyegon to break 4 for the mile.
That's
which is
cool.
Quite impressive. Will be impressive if they manage to pull it off, because the mile world record is 4:07 and some change currently. So she'd have to knock 8 seconds off the mile world record.
That's big over a mile.
That's a lot. Yeah, exactly. In fact, and you did a video on this not too long ago, only about 2,000 men in history have gone under 4 minutes for the mile.
Well, they say that more people have summited Everest than run a sub 4 minute mile.
But you've run a sub 4 minute mile.
I absolutely crushed it. I think I did like a 3:22 or something.
Yeah. Down a very steep hill. Mark can't go under 4 minutes for a mile on a track.
It did. In honesty, probably the most damaging thing to my body that I've ever done. Anyway, the sub 4 minute mile is obviously quite a historical moment in sports. Roger Bannister running that sub 4 minute mile, and interestingly, and I didn't know this until researching for that video we were just talking about. The women's sub 5 minute mile was broken pretty much in the same few weeks as Roger Bannister running the sub 4 minute mile.
That's if Faith Kipyegon goes under 4, then let's just say the women have come a lot further than the men, because there's no men going under 3 anytime soon. But yeah, the idea behind this is obviously kind of throwing the rule book out the window a little bit, using the super shoes, getting it. It's going to be in the Stade de France, which is exactly where they have the Diamond League and where Faith Kipyegon actually broke the 1500 meter world record not too long ago. And she's going to attempt to break sub 4. We're not sure whether she's going to have other people running with her, pace setters, how that's all going to work. They haven't given the details of that, but they have said it's going to be somewhere between June 26th and June 28th of this year.
Yeah, so she's only got, 8-9 weeks to kind of get ready and get all the logistics sorted. I assume they'll be doing that. Obviously, it won't count as an official mile world record because it's not an actual race, and assuming they are going to have some kind of pacemakers. I'm really excited to see what they sort of pull out the bag in terms of the innovation. Because that breaking 2 was so innovative with all the lasers and the formations, but 4 minute mile, what they're going to have to do to just help.
Yeah.
8 seconds is a lot.
Are they going to have super illegal super shoes that are 60 millimeter stack height or something?
I don't know. I'm really pumped. Now we've had a lot of rule changes happening, in particular around kind of frame hydration and bar setups. Ironman have adopted these as well with some further clarification, but I'll be honest, there's a lot of pages to read.
Yeah, we did cover this not too long ago, and then obviously the DTU, the German Federation, stepped in and added their clarifications on the back of that, which was another 9 pages to the rule book on where they believe hydration. So now World Triathlon has had meetings with the DTU, the German Federation, have announced a clarification of the rules, what they call a World Triathlon fairing rules. And they've made a few adjustments to what they announced previously. We're not sure exactly when these are going to come in. We assume they're going to give like a 30-day grace period, and then they're going to be rolled out across the board. Also not heard anything from Ironman yet. We assume Ironman has been pretty much towing the line as far as using the same standardized rules as World Triathlon. So we assume they're going to do the same, and they will also roll it out maybe 30 days after this announcement. But here are the rules as they've now been clarified. I say clarified in inverted commas because some of them are not that clear. Okay, so World Triathlon has now officially adopted the same rule as Ironman had done before, which was that your aerobar extensions cannot extend beyond the front of your front wheel, which they didn't actually have in their rule book before Ironman put that one in, and that's gone that way around. Also, they've changed the attachments rules, or clarified the attachments rules, because DTU said they couldn't come behind the steerage tube, and World Triathlon said they couldn't go between your arms and above a certain height, etc. So now they've clarified it with essentially what's going to be an imaginary box around your front aero bars of where you can fit in your any hydration mounting cages, etc. Maximum 250 millimeters in the direction of the saddle, so backwards. A maximum of 200 millimeters in height. No further forward than the foremost point of your handlebars or clip-ons, so the front of your aero bars, and a maximum of 20 millimeters from the highest point of your front wheel.
That's quite close to the wheel.
I don't really understand. I don't understand that one. Maybe or you just see that box. Anyway, bike computers are excluded from this, so you can have your bike computer sticking out above your hydration mount if necessary, if you want to. So that's one of the clarifications. And also, you can't have anything mounted above your arms at all, ever, which I think we'll call the Joe Skipper rule.
Okay, all right, fine. Okay. All right, and then what about in-frame hydration?
Well, there was all kinds of limits on fluid volume. So it was like you can't have more than 2 liters behind your saddle, you can't have more than 2 liters in front of your saddle. They've tried to, again, clarify that. So you still cannot exceed 2 liters in total capacity around the steering axis, so around that front thing. Obviously, that's a weight thing. You don't want more than 2 kgs of fluid there to steer. You probably wouldn't want to anyway. There's not a limit of how many bottles you can use to store up to 2 liters there, but those bottles have to fit in that imaginary box, and they can't go above your arms. And to be honest, you're going to struggle to fit 2 liters on there. There's another imaginary box behind your rear saddle, so where you mount your rear carriers, and that's 30 centimeters by 30 centimeters imaginary box, and everything has to fit inside there.
Excluding the bottles? Excluding the bottles,
which is actually quite interesting, because you could essentially have a meter-long bottle that comes out the back. You know, those bottles you see in the yard drinks that you see in Vegas. You could have one of those sticking out the back as a fairing. I don't think anyone would do that, but you could, in theory. There's one other thing that if you have frame hydration, there's limits. It can't be more than 2 liters. But it does state that if you do have an internal hydration system, no additional attachment may be added to the rear of the frame. And I'm not entirely sure what that means. I assume that doesn't include bottle cages behind the saddle. I think that's more like the Specialized Shiv, where you have that big box kind of thing behind the saddle as a fairing.
Looking at the images in the rulebook, I would say it's probably targeted towards things like the Specialized Shiv. But I've got to be honest, I think this is something we need to kind of research and clarify, because there is a little bit of ambiguity here, and I don't want people turning up to races.
Maybe a full investigation. We get some of the refs involved and give you a full video on exactly how to set up your bike for your next race now that there's all these rules in place.
Now for What's the Tech, and we have got electric inflators. Oh yes.
Silka have launched their electric inflators. Silka, if you don't know, is actually one of the original makers of a track pump. Silka led the way in precision inflation in the world's first gauge-equipped pump the legendary Super Pista and Pista floor pumps, which still exist to this day. It's pretty incredible. They was invented in 1917.
Nice.
It's pretty cool.
That is very cool.
Yeah.
They're really nice pumps as well. So they're electric inflators. So they've got the, how do they call it? The Electrico Micro and Ultimate. So they've got 2 inflators. The Micro is 120 grams and then the Ultimate's 220 grams. And essentially you can charge these inflators up and that's it. You don't need to be heading out with CO2 cartridges. The Micro is the equivalent of 3 CO2 cartridges. And then the Ultimate is more probably for an at-home, keeping the kind of your garage. It's the equivalent of 9 CO2 cartridges. And pretty nifty. Like if you're out on the trails or out on the road and you get a puncture, it's really quick and easy thing to do.
So the Micro doesn't have a display. It just inflates it up to 72 PSI and then automatically cuts off, which will get you home and get you, 72 PSI is pretty much what you're running anyway, isn't it? And the larger one, the Ultimate, you can adjust it actually from 3 to 100 PSI, whatever you want to fine tune your pressure at, which definitely solves a lot of problems. So I think one of the biggest problems or biggest solutions of this is that you no longer actually are inflating your tubeless tires with CO2, because if you've done that before, you'll know that inflating it on the roadside actually ruins all the sealant, and you have to reinstall the entire thing, whereas now it's actually just air that it's using to reinstall, which is way better, I believe, than using your CO2. They actually had quite an issue with these. They delayed the release of them by a few days because of Trump's tariffs. So they couldn't get them into the US. So they decided to delay the launch and then decided they actually couldn't get any into the US. So they sold the 100 that they had there.
Well, just for the launch ready.
Instantly, while the rest of the world, they are available. Although I did actually look on the UK site now, and they're also sold out there. So you had to be a bit quicker than that. Yeah. But new ones are coming out soon.
So the Micro you can grab for £119, and then the Ultimate is £149. But as you say, they've gone pretty quick. They're being popular. So stay tuned.
This is the death knell for the CO2 cartridge, I think. On to the race news, and all eyes this weekend were on the big race, Ironman Texas. Obviously a massive one in the Pro Series, and it also had the big showdown between Cat Matthews and Taylor Knibb, which everyone was itching to see because Cat Matthews has never beaten Taylor Knibb, but then they've never raced over the full distance, which very much seems to be Cat Matthews' specialty.
And also they're both coming out of kind of a winter or sort of that off season, trying to improve certain areas, be that, Cat trying to bridge that gap on the bike and various
And they both come off absolutely massive 2024s. Cat Matthews obviously winning the Pro Series, Taylor Knibb winning pretty much everything she started. It was quite the showdown. And it actually, it turned into quite the showdown. Yeah. So Cat Matthews came out the water a full 5 minutes and 45 seconds behind Taylor Knibb, who actually managed to swim on the feet of Rachel Zelinkas, which is very impressive. It was a very fast swim time, and definitely set Taylor Knibb up for the driving seat for the race. Taylor Knibb then did what she pretty much always does in these races and set to work on the bike, putting everyone to the sword, which she did very much so, and she rode away from pretty much everyone. She rode a very impressive 4 hours, 19:46.
Yeah.
Which was like, wow, eyebrows up. That is incredible riding time. But then actually Cat Matthews came in with a less of a gap than she had in T1 into T2, because she only rode, I think, 22 seconds slower, 4 hours, 20:08 bike split. Which I think is actually more... I mean, we think of Taylor Knibb as like an Uber biker, don't we? For Cat Matthews to ride the exact same time as her over that distance. And they weren't together, they weren't following each other, they weren't matching each other, they were 5 minutes apart the whole way.
Well, I think it goes to show, as I said, like, Cat went away over the off-season, started working with Alex Dowsett, and she's like, I need to work on my bike if I'm going to be competitive with Taylor Knibb. And there we go.
Yeah.
Flipping impressive.
Done.
I mean, in doing so, Taylor Knibb has now technically set a new women's Ironman bike record, full stop.
Yep.
So beating Daniela Blemmel's time of 4:20:47 from Ironman Hamburg last year.
How much time do you think she lost with her dismount?
Oh God, did you see that?
This is not how you
I think she actually flew off her bike across the
so she didn't lose any time there, but she probably did lose a bit of time in transit. Well, it was not pretty, but she did get off. She didn't do any serious damage, and she did get running. However, Kat Matthews also got running, and in the first mile, knocked 30 seconds out of her lead. Taylor Knibb was clearly not that comfortable. She actually went to a porta potty stop in those first couple miles, which lost her even more time, and the gap was very soon like 2.5 minutes. And Kat Matthews was flying. She was not wasting any time. She wasn't like, oh, I'll wait till the last 10Ks to catch this. She
actually went through the half marathon point in 1:20 and I think 45 seconds.
Yeah, but she was already way past Taylor Knibb at that point. She caught her at like 10 miles. She was not waiting around for the back end of this marathon. Kat Matthews kept moving incredibly well. Even though she had the race well won, she kept going to run a full 2 hour 49:19 split for the full marathon, which obviously she slowed down quite a lot in the second half after running a 1:20 first half, but she was still over 10 minutes ahead of Taylor Knibb at the finish line. One of the most impressive Ironman performances I think we've ever seen. It is, in fact, the fastest ever official Ironman time by a woman in the world. There's actually only 2 women who have ever gone faster, Anne Haug and Dana Reef, and both of them did that at Challenge Roth, which is a notoriously fast iron distance course. So very impressive by Kat Matthews, and definitely, well, looks like the one to beat this year.
Yeah, obviously Taylor Knibb in second, but also third, joining them on the podium, Lisa Patera. So, yeah.
Very impressive. Kat Matthews moves up to second on the Pro Series. Chloe Lane is actually still in front of her, but then Chloe Lane's the only one who's scored 3 races so far. It is very early days in the Pro Series to be looking at those points.
On to the men's race, and wow, that was a very deep field. Obviously some notable names there in the mix. We had Kristian Blummenfelt, Gustav Iden lining up here, along with the likes of Rudy von Berg, Cam Worth. And yeah, the swim again was on a 48-minute 3.8 kilometre swim.
Yeah, Andreas Selvesberg led that out there. He's on a bit of a comeback after a pretty bad illness. So he led out the water with Ben Canute right with him. Ben Canute, I think, was actually out of transition in first or near the front. But it was really all eyes were on Kristian Blummenfelt to see what he was going to do. And he was right there in contention, and Gustav Iden. And everyone was very excited for the return of the Norwegians to the full distance Ironman. They all together, and it was a big group that stayed together for the ride. In fact, it didn't look like anyone was going to do anything. We had Cam Worth moving up from behind, and Leon Chevalier.
Leon and Cam seemed to work together, didn't they? And bridged up, and then unfortunately Leon quite soon after was then dropped. Yeah,
Gustav Iden then got a puncture, unlike Kristian Blummenfelt's in Oceanside, though. It took him about 30 seconds to change it. Kristian Blummenfelt was like, whoa, where was this in Oceanside? Anyway, he got going again, but it did he didn't really factor in the race again after that. He did say beforehand he wasn't sure he was going to have the full run for a full Ironman, and that was how it turned out.
Well, before we get to T2 and off the bike, actually, it's worth mentioning Cam Worth's bike time. Obviously, he bridged up with Leon Chevalier. He actually posted a 3:53.32 bike split. Absolutely. You have to check whether the course is short or something.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
exactly.
Absolutely nuts. So that, again, we've got another record. That is the men's Ironman bike record, full stop. That's beating Robert Callan's 3:54.33 that he set in Vitoria-Gasteiz last year.
Wow. Incredible. In fact, there were a lot of men who went under 4 hours here, including Kristian Blummenfelt, who did 3:57. So it was a lot of guys, and they were on for a very fast time. In fact, Kristian Blummenfelt, if he had run his 2:30 that he was hoping for, would have probably done the Ironman world record of all time. But he didn't quite go that fast, but he did go out fast enough to set that record, because he did the first half of the marathon in 1 hour 15. And by that point, it was pretty much a one-horse race. No one was competing with him. It was Kristian Blummenfelt's show from there on. He ended up posting a 2:34.03 marathon and crossing the line in 7 hours, 24:20. And yeah, Kristian Blummenfelt's back.
Yeah, 8 minutes clear of second place, which is Antonio Benito Lopez. Fantastic performance by him. He came in 7 hours, 32 minutes. Then Rudy von Berg in third. Rudy's having a great season, isn't he?
He as well. After his podium at this one and podium at Oceanside, he now leads the Pro Series. Again, early days to be looking at Pro Series rankings, but he is in a very good position.
Yeah. Well, that was one big race this weekend. We had a whole host of other smaller races. Challenge Gran Canaria. We had Marta Lagomnik taking the win on the women's side. And the men's side, we had a bit of a race with, well, notable name, Jonathan Brownlee there racing. But it was actually Will Draper that took the win there.
Yeah, Jonathan Brownlee did say in a post afterwards, he said, great to finally feel like I was racing this distance rather than just surviving it. So yeah, we are looking forward to Johnny Brownlee figuring out the middle distance. There was also Challenge Taiwan middle distance. Alana Siffert taking the win on the women's side and Kieran Stort taking the win on the men's side there.
Yep. And also Heather was actually out at that event.
She was.
She's on her way back right now. So we've actually got a video coming from that event. I hear and understand it was quite a spectacle.
Yeah, the biggest triathlon in the world.
Over 7,000 athletes taking part in numerous events throughout that entire weekend.
Who knew?
Wow. We also had 70.3 Valencia. On the women's side, it was won by Daniela Kleiser coming through a blistering run split at the end there, ahead of Jeanne Lahair and Lizzie Rayner in third. On the men's side, we had Jonas Vogel taking the win ahead of Fabian Kraft and Adrian Briffot.
And then there was also 70.3 Peru with Cecilia Perez taking the win on the women's side and Casimir Moani taking the win on the men's side. Coming up this weekend, there's actually another pro series race. 7.3 Venice Jesolo is this weekend. Another pro series race, so more points for that pro triathlon series on Ironman side, and 7.3 Port Macquarie also this weekend.
All right, now for Tri-Spy. Last week we gave you this image.
Yeah. Iron Hulk Triathlon said, is that Gustav Eden in the Tri-Spy when he won Kona? It wasn't. It was, however, Peak Endurance Solutions got it right. Tri-Spy with my little eye. Bart Aeronauts from the podium in Kona in 2018. In fact, everyone seemed to know exactly where the photo was from.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Given away by the wreath around his neck, I think, gives away that it was Kona. Kayla Pocconi also said Bart Aeronauts in Kona, and Jorge Gasco also said Bart Aeronauts Ironman Kona 2018. Well done, everyone got that right.
I was initially quite impressed. Why they actually know where? But yeah, that's quite.
It's definitely a Kona photo, isn't it?
Yeah. All right. Moving on then to this week's photo. Here it is. Do your best.
You can tell it's a 70.3 at least. Say what? Okay, last week Heather and I had a discussion about how you would improve triathlon on the show, and lots of good ideas. Some of them better than others, to be fair. A lot of people would just make it cheaper, as if we had the power to do that. But Paige Turner actually said, the Chicago Triathlon has a super sprint divvy bike, equivalent to Santander Cycle in London division. And this is interesting because I actually said while we were having the discussion that it would be cool to have a triathlon where everyone had the same bikes, maybe like a Boris bike in London or something, or even if it's just a standardized bike sponsored, so that you could really see who the best triathlete was and it had nothing to do with equipment. She said, you pay a little more than you would for a regular super sprint, and when you arrive at transition, you pick up your divvy bike and set up your gear next to it. You only compete against those on a divvy bike, so it's really fun and hard because there's only 3 gears. I love it because you don't have to travel with my bike and participate, and it's great for first-timers who may not own a bike, and I agree, that sounds like a great idea.
I want to do one.
Yeah,
that sounds amazing.
Although I can imagine Mark showing up with a Silka optimized chain that he's dipped in wax, and he's quickly ripping the chain off the divvy bike and putting on his.
I'd be like getting the tire pressure right. Yeah, quickly sorting the chain out.
Clipping on some aero bars.
Could I change the pedals and have click pedals? And
I think you're missing the spirit of this whole competition. Yeah, Mark.
It's smart, you know. I actually like the idea of the bikes all just being, you don't choose your bike beforehand.
You don't get it before the race. You get it after you come out the swim.
And you just run up and grab whichever bike you get to first.
But you have to swipe your credit card when you get there, because sometimes those payment machines, you're like,
yeah, imagine.
Tell me what to the next bike.
Why was your T1 so slow? I just couldn't check
the
out
payment wouldn't process.
Yeah.
We had a few other comments on last week's show that we thought were worth reading out. Kenneth Maybe said, should make 70.3 an Olympic event, and then long distance and short distance would meet for a proper showdown.
Disagree.
And Mohammed Jafar also said similar, add long distance triathlon to the Olympics.
Disagree.
Mark disagrees. I think it's a great idea. In fact,
of course you do.
In fact, there was a big debate when they first were trying to include triathlon in the Olympics, whether it should be an Ironman distance or a full distance that you included in the Olympics, as opposed to what they do now, which is the Olympic distance. The Olympic distance was created to get it in there. But there was a lot of argument from the French in particular going, that's not the spirit of triathlon. Triathlon spirit is the long distance, and you should include the long distance in Olympics if you're going to include any triathlon. But Mark disagrees.
I think this is a discussion for another day. I think we're at the end of the show. But no, I love long distance racing. I just don't think you're going to get any, like you currently get, like, I don't know, my friend's mum who has no interest in triathlon watching a bit of the triathlon at the Olympics or the mixed team relay because it's quick and easy. You can watch bits of it. If you suddenly put a long distance triathlon, no one's tuning in. Who does?
Counterpoint, because the Olympic road race in cycling isn't 1 hour long.
This is true, but there's stuff going on.
7 hours long.
There's stuff going on where I just don't.
They're just riding a peloton for 6.5 hours and then they sprint
we can tune in for the last 20k, don't you? So everyone does. Come on.
Okay, I think we're going to stop this discussion. Yeah. Thanks for watching, everyone. Coming up, as we said, biggest triathlon in the world. Heather was out in Taiwan. That's coming up this weekend. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next weekend.